Special Operations Forces launched one of the most daring raids in history. They invaded a U.S. ally to kill the most wanted man on the planet. I recorded this conversation last week with NewsHour special correspondent Nick Schiffrin, who visited the scene shortly after the battle. Nick Schiffrin was the first Western reporter to arrive in Abbottabad, Pakistan that day and delivered exclusive, extraordinary video. Images from inside the compound just hours after Bin Laden was killed. At the time, Nick was ABC News correspondent in the region, and now he is a NewsHour special correspondent, and he joins me in the studio. So what did we see in that video?
Hari, we saw how the world's most wanted man lived and how he died. In terms of how he lived, we see a bedroom, a large bed, bigger than any bed elsewhere in the house. We saw the medications he was on, very simple medications available at the local pharmacy. We saw a pantry where there was a week's worth of food stored. We saw so many signs of children. There was a red wagon outside in the backyard. There were 12 kids living there. Half of them were Bin Laden's. We also saw a satellite dish outside. That was a one-way communication device. He used to watch TV on that dish. Of course, never used it to communicate with the outside world. And of course, we saw how he died. The pools of blood in his bedroom and in the room of Holland, his son. A mess that maybe left behind in exactly where the computers were. And all the files from those computers.
5 years later, the news almost on a daily basis mentions ISIS. It doesn't mention Al-Qaeda so much. Explain the shift.
Yeah, I think as one longtime Al-Qaeda observer puts it, Al-Qaeda's kind of like become Microsoft. It's still got a decent share of the market, but it's not preeminent. It's not really seen as cutting edge, and it doesn't really appeal to the younger generation. And that is because, of course, what we call core Al-Qaeda, the Al-Qaeda leadership, as it was defined in 9/11 and the years after, has been decimated. And that started before Bin Laden was killed. About 2 or 3 years before, probably 2009, CIA moved a lot of assets and intelligence and technology into the region, and drones started picking off these leaders.
But what about the Al-Qaeda affiliates that have spread in other parts of the world and still seem pretty active? I mean, are these essentially franchise operations?
That's exactly what it is. And there was a reason that they were created even before Bin Laden was killed, because core Al-Qaeda was on the run. So you had to have these affiliates, and they still have some success. And that's really still the threat of Al-Qaeda today. The most prominent one, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, based in Yemen. That's the group that has come closest to attacking the West. You had the underwear bomber, if you remember that print cartridge bomb that didn't go off, and also one of the members of the team that attacked Charlie Hebdo in Paris, probably got training from Yemen. But what they've succeeded at recently is one of Bin Laden's other core tenets, not only attacking the West, but really ingratiating the local population. Again, something that ISIS does not do. And what AQAP has done in Yemen recently is worked with local tribal chiefs, and that has allowed them to actually gain ground in Yemen. So right now, they are actually doing quite well in Yemen. There's 3 more affiliates. Most prominent one, other than AQAP, is Nusra in Syria. Again, also working with the local population, working with other groups that fight Assad, no longer only focused on the West. AQIM in North and West Africa has had some headline-grabbing attacks recently, although not quite clear how organized they are as a group anymore. And lastly, al-Shabaab, totally locally focused on the Somali government and the Kenyans who have come into Somalia. So to use a sports metaphor, Al-Qaeda still fields a team. They're still on the field, but not a lot of long passes anymore, not a lot of touchdowns, trying to gain 2-3 yards at a time. And the coach, Zawahiri, isn't particularly well liked by the players, can't communicate that well. The bench is very weak, but still a threat.
All right, Nick Schiffrin, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Hari.
The raid on Bin Laden's compound was watched closely by President Obama and his national security advisors. Among them, Leon Panetta, who was CIA director at the time. He watched the raid unfold in real time from the agency's Langley headquarters, and he joins me now. So, Secretary, what was that day like for you? It was a culmination of a lot of work that went into it for years.
It was an awful lot of work that stretched back 10 years almost to 9/11. And an awful lot of people deserve tremendous credit for that. CIA, the intelligence agencies, those involved with the Special Forces operation. There were just an awful lot of people who did various pieces of the intelligence effort and the military effort that resulted in the raid itself. But it was something that, as an individual responsible for kind of overseeing the operation from the CIA, it was a remarkable operation, and a lot of tribute goes to the bravery and courage of those who conducted it.
Where is Al-Qaeda now? Meaning, is the infrastructure, the network that Osama bin Laden exploited, does that still exist?
You know, we've done a very good job at decimating Al-Qaeda's leadership, particularly in Pakistan. And I think, obviously, the bin Laden operation was kind of the primary effort to go after the spiritual leader of Al-Qaeda. And so I think generally a good job at decimating their leadership. At the same time, Al-Qaeda has probably metastasized, as we've seen with other terrorist operations in the Middle East. There are variations of Al-Qaeda that are still operating very much in the Middle East and North Africa.
So have we succeeded then as a policy to degrade their network to almost zero? Or, as you mentioned, they've sort of sprung out into different branch operations in other parts of the world?
The reality is that that terrorism remains a threat. It's metastasized into ISIS, it's metastasized into Boko Haram and al-Shabaab, and so it continues to be very much a threat that the United States and other countries in the world have to focus on. This is a long-term effort. We've had some success, there's no question about it. We've gone after their leadership. We've done well to prevent another 9/11 type attack, but there remains an awful lot more work to be done in order to protect this country.
You know, 5 years on, have we fully understood the complicity of Pakistan in all this?
It is. It's been a challenging period to develop the relationship with Pakistan. Obviously, Pakistan was helpful in being able to work with us in many areas. Certainly in the intelligence area, we worked together. On military efforts, we worked together. But at the same time, Pakistan was difficult because they had a close relationship to various terrorist networks, and you were never quite sure just exactly where their loyalties would lie. It was for that reason, very frankly, that when we were looking at the bin Laden operation, which we would have preferred, frankly, to have worked with Pakistan, but there were so many questions raised about whether or not we could trust them that the president decided that we should do it alone.
You know, when you look at the landscape from your vantage point, it seems that the terrorists learned more from us about how we hunted down bin Laden, how we went after organizations, their leadership infrastructure, and now we're in an era where terror groups operate almost independently in cells, and it's hard to find a single person that runs anything that we can go after.
Well, you're right in the sense that just as we've learned how to confront terrorist groups and try to track them and go after their planning for possible attacks on this country, they've learned as well. They've learned, a lot of our technology, our process, how we operate, and the result is that they operate much more in a lone wolf fashion, in the sense that they do outreach. They have individuals that are well placed, but they minimize the contacts, they minimize the planning, and that makes them even a greater threat.
Secretary Leon Panetta, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.